Hello family, my name is Chris, I am your home gamer dad, and on this tutorial we're going to be forming a formidable fighting force in order to go up against Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world. Knowing is half the battle, so let me teach you all I can about G.I. Joe, the deck builder from Renegade Games. This tutorial is going to go over pretty much solo to 3 and 4 player modes, but it's going to mostly stick to solo and 2-player variants, mainly because that's how I generally play the games. I'm either by myself or I'm doing 2-player, 2-handed. I also will not be focusing on any of the expansions as well, though I will be having playthroughs of this game coming out on my channel over time in order to be able to show those off little by little. So make sure that you're subscribed to the Home Gamer Dad in order so you don't miss any of those coming out. But for right now in this tutorial, we are sticking solely to the core box. With that said, let's get this basic training going. As always, if you have any questions, be sure to leave them down in the comment section below and I'll get back to them as soon as I can. Or if you're looking for any particular part of the game that you wish to learn, always check the timestamps in order to see everything broken up that way, and you can jump to that section of the video. Till then, let's go ahead and do what we can to show them what we are made of. Yo, Joe. G.I. Joe the Deck Builder, designed by Dan Blanchett and T.C. Petty III, and published by Renegade Game Studios, is a 1 to 4 player cooperative deck building campaign style adventure that pits the elite squad of men and women codenamed G.I. Joe against the global terrorist organization known as Cobra. The players recruit Joes, get geared up, and take their signature vehicles on missions over land, sea, and air, fighting to save the world. Completing missions earns great benefits, while failing them makes Cobra stronger. Fail too many, and Cobra will conquer the world. It's up to the Joes to make sure that doesn't happen. Setup begins with either starting with the Cobra side or the Joe side. Doesn't matter which side you set up first because you're going to need to do them both anyway before you start your game, but for the sake of this tutorial, we are going to be starting with the Cobra side, mainly because this is going to be the same way you set it up no matter your player count, whereas the Joes will have a slightly different setup for a solo 2-player mode variant. To begin setting up Cobra, you're going to want to determine which mission it is that you're going to want to tackle for your game. Each mission is broken up into 3 acts, and each one of those acts will have 1 gold border finale card, as well as 5 individual story mission cards. As of September 2023, the core game has missions 1 and 2 in it. Shadows of the Serpent expansion has missions 3 and 4. The Cold Snap expansion has missions 5 and 6, and the New Alliance, the Transformers crossover expansion, has the 7th mission in it. For this tutorial, we're going to be sticking with mission 1 from the core box, and all other cards you're going to see from here are going to be from the core set. All missions have a very similar setup to them, with only a few expansions having additional rules in order to put into the setup. For those, either check your rule books for whatever expansions you have, or stay tuned to the Home Gamer Dad for when I cover them. When setting up your story mission, you're going to want to separate all your cards into their 3 acts. In the upper left corner, you're going to see what mission you are on, and then below in the center, you're going to see what part of the act this is. So all the Act 1s are together, Act 2s and Act 3s, 1 golden finale card, and each one of their 5 mission cards. You're then going to go to each one of the acts here, and you're going to take these 5 mission cards, and you're just going to give them a shuffle, and you're going to take 2 of them and place them face down. All the rest of the cards you have, which would be the 3 left over for each one of the numbers here, you're going to place back in the box. This is going to give you a completely new order of missions that you're going to be doing for your game. So this way, every time you play mission 1, you'll actually be playing it differently because things will always be different and never what they seem. Finally, we're going to combine all these into 1 stack. So starting with mission 1, you're going to take the finale card and put it on top. Act 2 is going to be the same way here, and then Act 3 is going to go on the top as well, and then we're going to combine them into 1 deck. Starting with Act 3, you're going to place that on top of Act 2, and then Act 2 is going to go onto Act 1. So a standard story mission for G.I. Joe the Deck Builder consists of 9 missions. Act 1 with 3, Act 2 with 3, and Act 3 with 3, leading you all the way to your final victory at the end of Act 3. Last thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to flip it over to reveal the first mission of the game. All players are going to be able to see this before it actually activates in order to be able to help them start building their deck and preparing for the dangers ahead. Next to your story mission, you're going to want to make sure you have your success and your failure tokens. The blue one is success, the red one is failure. This will show you what missions you have succeeded in and failed at during the course of your game. And then you're going to want to locate your threat meter. The threat meter is double-sided. You'll see it in the upper right corner here. This says 1, 2. The other side says 3, 4. So for this case, we are going to be on the 1, 2 side. You're going to want to set this to whatever player count you have for your game. But again, because this is a solo 2-player variant, you're going to want it on this side. Lastly, you're going to want to place the threat meter marker, and you're going to start it in the blue zone all the way down here. Next, you're going to want to find your stack of complication cards. And on the bottom left-hand side of your complication cards, you're actually going to see act numbers as well. So this starting set will all have the same Act 1 on the bottom. You're going to find Act 1s, Act 2s, and Act 3s, and you're going to keep them completely separate. The Act 1s you're going to flip over, so this way they're face down, and you're going to give these a good shuffle. You're going to place these in your play area on your Cobra side, and you're going to leave the Act 2s and the Act 3s to the side for right now. As you go through the game, when you beat an act in G.I. Joe the Deck Builder, so say you beat Act 1, as soon as the Act 2 card goes into play, this deck would then get shuffled into the complication deck. So your complication deck is constantly growing throughout the course of your mission, giving you worse and worse things in order to deal with. Next, you're going to want to find your stacks of Cobra Troopers, Cobra Battalions, and Cobra Officers. You're going to keep all of these separated into their sacks. So basically the Cobra Battalions are all the same card. You're going to have 5 of these, so that's going to be in that stack. Cobra Troopers are all the same, so you're going to keep them in your stack. And then the Cobra Officers, which actually says Officer in the upper left corner, you're going to find all them and just leave them in the stack as well. These are all going to remain face up, and they're going to go into your game when they're called upon, whether it be through a complication card or through a story event. Once you're all done, your Cobra setup is going to look something along this way. You're going to have your story missions here. You're going to have your threat meter with your marker, your success and your failure buttons. I like leaving them next to the threat meter and sliding them under their appropriate pile once I have either completed or failed the mission. You have your troopers, your battalions, your officers, your face down of Act 1 complications with Act 2 and Act 3 waiting in the wings for when you move on to the next act. This is all Cobra. Let's move on to the Joes. To set up the Joe side, you're going to want to take the 6 starter leader cards. That would be Duke, Snake Eyes, Lady J, Scarlet, Flint, and Roadblock in the base game. You're going to take these 6 cards and you're either going to shuffle them together and give them out randomly to all the players in the game, or you can handpick them. It's really up to you. It's whatever you feel like you want to do. But whichever one of these Joes you have picked, you're going to want to find their matching promoted leader card, because you're going to want to take both of those to your play area, because one's going to go into your starter deck and one is going to be available to purchase later in the game. Next, you're going to want to construct your starting deck, which is going to be the exact same for all player counts. Your starting deck is going to consist of 6 GIs, 1 comms, 1 second effort, and 1 diffuse. You're going to take these 9 cards and you're going to put them together, and then you're going to take the leader card that you chose from your non-promoted leaders and put that in. So now you have a starting deck of 10 cards. Give that a shuffle, and this is your starting deck all put together. From this deck, you're going to want to make sure you have space next to it in order to have a discard pile, and then you're going to take your promoted leader card and leave that on the bottom. This will be available for you to purchase later in the game for 6 recruitment points, and I'll explain what recruitment points are and how to purchase things a little bit later. Also, be sure to give yourself a turn sequence card just so you can keep track of what happens during the phases and the orders you need to do things from. But after you have all this set up, you're going to draw your first 5 cards to start your first hand, your starting hand, and that is how you set up your personal deck and beginning hand of cards. Back in the main play area near where you have Cobra already set up, you're going to want to be placing the hanger token in reach of all players, and you're going to take the starting vamp vehicle and put that right underneath. Next, you're going to want to take the stack of service rifles and put them within reach of everyone as well. This is a standard basic card that anybody can buy at any time during their turn for 2 recruitment points, and it also gives 2 recruitment points as well. You're then going to take the large stack of main deck cards, all from the core game, give them a good shuffle, and you're going to place them next to the service rifle. Thing to note, if you're playing solo mode, you're going to shuffle in the 5 remaining promoted leaders into the main deck. If you happen to have more than 5, say you have one of the promo packs in addition to it all, I would say just take them, give them a good shuffle just so you don't know who's who. Choose 5 and then shuffle those into the main deck as well. Remember, this is only for solo mode. You're only going to get the 5 promoted leaders shuffled into this deck during solo mode only. After the main deck has been shuffled and within reach of all the players, you're going to take the top 6 cards and place them face up, forming the lineup. This is effectively your market for the course of the game, and these cards will be cycling themselves through as you go along. These cards come in various flavors, including Joes, both regular and leaders, promoted leaders if you're in solo mode only, gear, utility, and transports. For a solo and 2-player mode, you're going to also want to have the reserve tile within reach. What the reserve tile is this is a special space for 1 card from your hand. A card is placed here, effectively out of play for the remainder of the turn, but when it comes to refilling your hand at the end of your turn, when you draw back up to 5, you're then going to take this card into your hand as well, meaning that if you plan correctly, you will have 6 cards in your hand on your next turn, which could lead to some very powerful combos and able to take out Cobra officers much easier than if you were in 3 or 4-player modes. Keep in mind, a Cobra card cannot be placed here, only 1 card per turn, and again, this is for solo and 2-player only as it says down here. For solo mode, you're going to want to take this button here and put it in front of you with the star side up. For 2 or higher players, you're going to want to keep it with the end of round facing up. So this is going to pretty much tell you what you're going to be doing at the end of all the rounds. Otherwise this is exactly how you would set up the Joes for a solo and 2-player mode, specifically solo in this one because we have promoted leaders here. And then with all that said and done, you put that with your Cobra setup and you are ready to begin your game. In G.I. Joe the Deck Builder, over the course of several rounds, 2 to 3 players will be working together, or a solo player will be going this on their own, going through missions, strengthening their deck in order to be able to take on Cobra as things progressively get stronger and stronger and harder over the course of the 9 missions. The players win if they get to the 9th mission of the deck and complete it in order to give them the victory over Cobra. But the players can lose multiple ways. First, if the threat meter ever makes its way to the very top here, if it ever touches this spot on any one of the modes, it's an immediate game over. Next would be the Cobra Battalions. Throughout the course of the game, you may be asked to place them over the lineup. If you ever have 5 of them on the lineup and you need to place a 6th one, you immediately lose. And finally, one of the least likely things to happen, because this deck is huge, if you ever run out of cards in the main deck and need to put one into the lineup but can't, then you have wasted too much time going through the deck, and that is another way that you can lose. A round consists of each player taking 1 turn, with the exception of solo mode, where in that mode, the solo player will be taking 2 turns for each round. They're going to be able to track that using the end of round token. Whenever they have completed one of their turns, they will flip the token over, and then once they have completed the next turn, then they're going to follow the end of round listings right here. If you were playing a 2 to 4 player variant of the game, whoever is the first player gets this in their possession, and once they've taken a turn and everyone else has taken their turn, before they take their next turn, they resolve whatever is here on the end of round. For a 2 to 4 player game, it is greatly encouraged to have what's called open comms, meaning that people are allowed to communicate with each other pretty much about everything. What cards they have in the hand, what they're looking to acquire from the main deck from the lineup, ideas for taking down various enemies. Nothing is off the table or hidden from your fellow Joes during the course of the game. Team strategy is key to victory here. Knowing is half the battle, so you need to share your knowledge with everybody at the table. Well, unless you're solo, then you got this. You got this. Starting with the first player, each player will go through a series of steps that you can find here on your turn sequence card in order to make up their player turn. Once they have completed all the steps, it is then the next player's turn, or the solo player goes again before the end of the round. Once all players have had at least 1 turn, 2 for solo play, then the round ends, all the effects happen as I mentioned, and then it's a repeating of that process until you either win or any of those loot conditions I mentioned before were met. The first thing that the players are going to do is the start phase. Now, when you're doing the very first round of the game, the start phase is actually completely skipped. So you don't have to worry about any of what I'm about to explain until you start round 2. The exception being the threat meter. The threat marker will always start in the blue section, and that works again for both sides. There's a single point on the blue section down here for 3 to 4, and a single point down here for 1 to 2 players, so that will start there. At the end of the round, once all the players have taken their turn or solo has gone twice, then a part of the end of round you have to do is move up the threat meter by 1. This would then move from the blue to the green, and it can never go back to the blue again for the rest of the game. Starting in round 2, it's in the green, it's going to constantly escalate, and you're going to have to keep track of it as you go along. But that also means at the beginning of round 2, you're going to have to see what story mission is in play. And of course, there's not going to be anyone in play because it's only round 2. You're going to go here and you're going to look at the top card of the story stack, and you're going to take it and move it into the active position. As soon as it is moved here, then you're going to do any triggers that happen to be red on the card, and you're going to also add complications. The red box over here tells you how many complications are attached to this particular story mission. These are left alone for now. You're not going to be touching these, but you will always have this information going forward because you're going to need that to know what Joes you're going to need to purchase in order to have a better shot at completing the mission, which is what these little wordings down here are, and I'll go over those momentarily. The number that you're going to look here in the red is going to be how many complication cards you're going to draw from the deck, and you're going to connect them to the mission. Once you're ready to start this mission and go on it in order to try to succeed at it, that's when the complication under the card triggers. So again, if there was no story mission in play, you would then put one in and then activate whatever it has written on it. If there was already a story mission in play, you would skip that step and move right on to effect activations. There are 3 different types of effects: mission effects, Cobra effects, and Joe effects. You have to trigger them in that order: mission, Cobra, Joe. But if you have multiples of any one type of effect, like say you have 2 Cobra effects on the field, you can trigger those effects in whatever order you please. Once all of that has been done, you can then move on to your next phase, the action phase. In the action phase, players are going to be going on missions in order to be able to defeat Cobra and their various influences around the board, as well as strengthening their deck by recruiting cards from the lineup. In round 1, there will most likely be no missions on the table at all, so this, and these wouldn't even be here in round 1 because nothing has triggered yet, though there are some expansions that do have missions available on round 1. However, normally, the action phase can be skipped and you would just go right to the recruitment phase. However, in later rounds, there are missions available, as we can see some examples here, and this is where the players will play cards from their hand in order to activate various abilities in order to go on missions and defeat Cobra. So again, just to clarify, during the action phase, it's actually 2 parts to the phase: the mission phase and the recruitment phase. You have to do the mission phase first. Once you have done doing all your missions, that's when you do your recruitment. When going on missions, only the active player can start a mission. That player would then choose a vehicle from the hangar and bring it into play. They would then choose a Joe from their hand in order to lead that mission. Some Joes are classified as leaders, which give them special benefits, but then there are others that you can just have any Joe at all start the mission. So instead of Duke here, I could have a standard GI start this mission. When you start a mission, you would then declare which mission you are going to be going up against. There are several different types of missions: side missions and group missions. Side missions are missions that can only be handled by the active player. Nobody else can help them out. However, in a 2 to 4 player game, the group missions over here can be assisted from the other players, meaning that if there is space in the vehicle that you're using, every vehicle has a number of Joes that can go on the mission. So in this case, the Vamp allows for 4 Joes to go on the mission. I could have 2 of mine, and then a second player could give one of their GIs to the mission, and depending on what else I have, another person can give a Joe to their mission as well. This is after I've declared which one of these missions that I will be going up against. And it's very important to determine which one I want to go up against because I have to match the skills appropriate for it in order to be able to roll a successful amount of dice. A Joe can only participate in a mission once per turn, so after this mission has been done, all these characters would just sit on the field getting ready for the recruitment stage. The Vamp would go back to the hangar, and this is the only vehicle that does that, and if anybody else contributed Joes to the fight, these cards would go to their discard piles. During a mission, you're allowed to play various other cards from your hand, specifically gear and utility cards. There are other cards that'll also possibly help you out, so why don't we go over the different types of cards and how they can affect missions. There are several different types of cards that you're going to come across throughout the game. You have your Joes, which can either be regular Joes or leaders or promoted leaders. You have gear, you have utility, transports, basic cards, starter cards, including the 3 that you had in your deck, and then the 6 GIs, which are also considered Joes. The number in the top left corner of each one of the cards is how much it costs in order to recruit it into your deck. So for example, Lightfoot here is 3. The promoted Snake Eyes is 6. Disarm is 2. All the starter cards are 0 because they start in your deck, and all service rifles will cost 2. The number right below that in the star is how much recruitment points it gives you during the recruitment phase, with the exception of the transport. The number below that shows you how many Joes can fit in that vehicle in order to go onto a mission. Every Joe has a specific set of skills that are tied to them, each with a number listed next to it. If a mission shares a skill keyword with that Joe and that Joe is on the mission, they contribute that many dice to the dice pool. If the Joe does not have a matching skill or is a basic GI, then they are going to be able to give 1 wild skill to the mission. Wild skill is not a named skill like all the other ones. It is pretty much something that represents everything, is always going to guarantee to give you 1 dice. Your goal to completing missions is to roll as many dice as you can in order to earn hits, which are here, in order to meet or exceed whatever number is listed on the card. Should you do that, then the mission is a success and it either comes off the board with some type of benefit, or you don't have to worry about it giving you any type of really nasty effects for the remainder of that turn. You will see right here on each one of the missions that they do have their skill keywords as well. Disrupting Drone has Recon and Stealth, Destro is Explosive and Martial Arts, and then the story mission is Tech or Tracker. The word "and" is there. You can use Joes that have either one of those special abilities to it. For Destro, for example, Explosives and Martial Arts, Lightfoot would be able to grant 3 dice because he's Explosives, whereas Snake Eyes over here would also be able to grant 3 dice because he has Martial Arts. Leatherneck has neither, but at least he'd be able to grant 1 wild dice, making that 3, 6, 7 dice in order to be able to roll in order to defeat Destro. Over here in the story mission, it's Tech or Tracker. Unfortunately, none of our guys have them here, but say you had somebody with Tech and somebody with Tracker, you would want to take whoever had the highest of the 2 in order to start the mission to give you the most dice you possibly can use for that mission. There are also some missions that say any 1 skill. You declare the skill that you want to use before you go on that mission, and then you'll be able to use whatever Joes you have in your disposal, or be able to get help from other people if it is a group mission, in order to roll as many dice as you can in order, again, to defeat the mission. The dice each have 3 blank sides on them, 2 1-hits, and then 1 2-hit results. The dice are also infinite. So even though the game only comes with 8, if you need to roll more than 8 dice, just re-roll any misses. So if you happen to have a 12 dice attack, roll all 8 dice and then take at least 4 of them out of the way and then re-roll those 4 in order to represent the 12 dice that you needed in order to go against the mission. Transports are the vehicles that the Joes ride into when completing their missions. Except for the Vamp, all the other transports have a transport icon associated with it, whether it be land, sea, or air. Certain story missions and other missions that you come across may have one of those icons on it as well. If you use a transport with a matching icon, you're then able to activate whatever the special ability the icon grants that particular vehicle. If you're going up against a mission, regardless of what it is, group or side, that doesn't have an icon on it or doesn't match the icon, then you'll still get some of the other abilities that are usually on top of it, but you won't get the additional bonus for matching the correct vehicle. Also, at the end of a mission, regardless of whether you win or lose, the vehicle that the player chose to go into the battle with goes into their discard pile, except for the Vamp. The Vamp will always go back to the hangar. These vehicles would then go into the discard pile of whoever the active player is, because they're the one that chose whatever vehicle they wanted for the mission, and then it'll get shuffled back into their deck. Once they redraw it, it would go back into the hangar, and anybody can use it on a future mission. This is considered refueling and repairing whatever vehicle it is that you went into battle with. The Vamp is the only one that will always go back into the hangar, so you will always guarantee to have at least one vehicle in the hangar ready to go on a mission in order to defeat Cobra. Gear, utility, and basic cards are all things that the Joes can take into the missions to them, or ways of earning various bonuses. These are things that you're going to use in order to strengthen your deck throughout the course of the game in order to be able to give you the edge over various missions that you need to go on. During the active player's turn, the active player generally can play gear and utilities and basic cards whenever they want, so long as it matches whatever the particular trigger is if it has it on the bottom of the card. So if they just want to play something in order to gain certain effects, like the Smart Missile here, in order to get a card from the discard pile, they can play it at any time during their turn on the mission phase. During the active player's turn, they can play utility cards, gear cards, and their basic cards pretty much whenever they want, so long as it matches whatever a possible trigger is for the card. You just have to read it to see exactly when it may need to go down, and then otherwise that you would be able to play them in order to boost your forces and then try to get an edge for your missions. So again, the active player can play these cards at any time on their turn during the mission part of the action phase. Doesn't matter how it goes so long as they know when they're going to play it and what the effect is. When they are on a group mission and another player is on the mission with them, that player, so long as they have a Joe in the fight, will be allowed to play gear and utility cards that have this M symbol on it. Actually, there's a starter card, the second effort card as well, that everyone starts with in their starting deck. It says roll 1 dice. The active player can play this at any time they want on their missions, and it'll just be re-rolling a dice. But if they have another player on the mission with them, they'll be able to play these cards during the mission as well in order to grant that ability. It's generally recommended for these to be played after the dice have been rolled, just to see what the results are, but these can definitely turn the tide in the Joe's favor. And again, only the ones with these special M's on it can be played by other players off turn in order to be able to affect a mission, but they need to have a Joe on a mission in order to activate the cards. Going into a little more depth with story missions. Story missions are a type of group mission where, again, multiple Joes from different players can be assigned to it in order to be able to defeat it. After all of the Joes have been assigned and before any rolling has been done, you're going to need to resolve any face-down complication cards that are underneath it by turning them face up, and if there's multiple ones below it, you can resolve them in any order. Complications come in all different types of ways. You have something like this, which is an immediate effect that raises the threat level by 1. You got other ones that are story mission connected, so then this would actually connect to the story mission and cause you to re-roll 1 hit after you've rolled the dice. Other cards may cause Cobra officers in order to come into play. So here it says, put Major Blood into play. So then he would be part of the board. He's not connected to the story mission. So even after you beat the story mission, the only things that'll be discarded would be whatever's directly connected to it. Major Blood is not connected to the story mission, so you'd still have to take care of him after the story mission has left the field. You could also possibly get precision strikes. These are a special type of side mission where only one player, the active player, can go and defeat them, and these are going to be specifically assigned to players. A player can only ever have 2 precision strikes assigned to them at any given time, and if a third tries to go into their spot, it is immediately discarded. Before I go into any one of these, the big thing to note right now is that the story missions usually can only be attempted once. If the attempt is successful, you're going to gain the benefit from the story mission up here. If it is a failure, which means you have rolled and you got less of a result than what the number is here. So say I rolled 5 dice in order to defeat this, I actually succeeded in that, so that is a 6 in order to be able to gain the benefit. However, if I had rolled this, I would have only had 4, and if I didn't have any means of changing these dice or whatever, then I would have failed it. Regardless of whatever, you have to take either the success or the failure when going up against story missions only, do whatever it says on whatever track you have managed to roll. So in this case, it would be the failure. The other time was success. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take that story mission and you're going to place it underneath the token of the appropriate type, whether it be a success or failure. In addition to story missions being group missions, Cobra officers are also group missions. So you'll be able to take multiple Joes from other players in order to be able to go and attempt to defeat them and get them off of the playing board. These characters are pretty much here to make your life much, much harder and can be handled again in the same way as you would a story mission, assigning a Joe inside of a vehicle in order to be able to defeat them. They don't have any vehicle icons, so it really doesn't matter, but you always want to make sure that you're matching one of their particular skills with as many Joes as you can going into the mission in order to defeat them. You gain no specific benefits from beating them other than that knowing that the bad thing that they are doing is completely gone. But, however, keep in mind, they may return later in the game through either the story mission or a complication card. Cobra Troopers, Cobra Battalions, and Precision Strikes are all side missions, meaning that these can only be attempted by the active player should they have them in their possession. The Cobra Battalions you're going to find in the lineup, so anybody can actually go ahead and try to get rid of them on their turn. Cobra Troopers get actually shuffled into a player's deck, whether they're going directly to the discard pile or directly into their deck, and are there pretty much to clog it up. So as soon as you draw it, it would go down into the field. If you do not take care of the trooper, it goes back into your deck and you'll have to find it later. And then Precision Strikes usually all have an end of turn ability. Whenever a Precision Strike is played, its end of turn ability is not active until the following player's turn. So in solo mode, you're going to give yourself one of these. Don't worry about it triggering. It's not going to trigger until your next turn, giving you a turn to try to figure out how to get rid of it. Remember with the battalions that if you try to place a sixth one on the lineup, then you immediately get a game over. And then of course, again, with all side missions, one more time as a reminder, they can only be defeated by the active player. So work with your Joes and work with your team in order to figure out the best order in order to get rid of stuff so you don't take too much threat meter increase or too many battalions on the field or too many troopers within your deck. Win or lose when it comes to side missions, after it has been completed, any active player cards that they have used for that mission are left face up in their playing area, and if you had the vamp, it's returned to the hangar. If you had a different vehicle that you used for it, it would go to their discard pile. These are then left here in waiting in order for the player to finish their mission phase and then move on to the recruit phase. Always remember the reserve slot as well for solo and two-player mode. If you happen to have cards in your hand that you think will be better off in the next round in order to like either drop the threat meter or to possibly do some type of reroll, always place it in the reserve spot so this way you're going to be able to have it for the beginning of that next turn. Regardless, after spending all of your Joes or whatever you have on your missions and any other cards that you have now completed the mission phase after finishing as many missions as you possibly can with as many Joes as you got. And in the recruit phase, you're going to add up however many recruit points you have here in order to be able to go and purchase something from the lineup. Just remember, if you happen to put a Joe over here in the reserve, their recruit points do not count towards your total amount here in order to purchase. This again will be going back to your hand at the beginning. Well, actually it'll go at the hand at the end of this turn when you draw back up to 5. As far as recruiting go, again, in the upper left corner are the costs of everything. And you can divide this out however you want. So here I have 5 points. I could spend 3 for Lightfoot and 2 for this arm. I could then spend 4 for the tranquilizer and have 1 left over. The big thing, the big thing to note, and there's going to be a huge note on here, when you recruit a card from the lineup, say I recruit Lightfoot here, this card goes to the top of your deck. Most deck builders go to your discard pile. In G.I. Joe the Deck Builder, whenever you recruit a new card to your deck, it goes to the top of your deck, and then the lineup is immediately refilled from the next card in the deck. Just keep an eye on this deck as you go through it, because remember, if this ever runs out and you need to draw a card from it, you immediately lose. Say I had these Joes for the recruitment phase, and as you can see, I have 6 recruitment points here, and I have my leader in the active area. What I can do then is I can spend all 6 of these points in order to promote my leader to their better form. And by doing that, this card is then removed from the game, so it's no longer in your deck, and then the promoted leader would then go on top. From now on, whenever you would draw that promoted leader, not only would you get more skills that are stronger, but your special ability then is also stronger, and they give you 2 recruitment points when going into the recruitment phase. So it's always a good idea to try to promote your leader as soon as possible. Once you're done doing your recruitment, all of your cards are going to go to your discard pile, and then you're going to resolve the end of phase or the end of turn effects. These are mission effects, Cobra effects, and Joe effects. The same thing as in the start phase, but there's going to be ones that specifically trigger during the end phase. Again, you're going to resolve them mission effects first, Cobra effects, and then Joe effects. If there is multiple in any one of those categories, you can resolve them in any order you want. You have to do them in that order, mission first, then Cobra, and then Joe effects. Finally, you're going to draw back up to a hand of 5. If you go to draw and you don't have any left, you're just going to go ahead and shuffle your deck until you have a brand new deck there and draw back up to 5. Remember, in the 2 and solo player modes, you get to take your reserve card here and add it to your hand, so you have a hand of 6 ready to go for your next turn. If one of the cards you drew, instead of drawing lowlights, say I drew my vehicle, this would then, on the beginning of my next turn, not immediately when drawing, it would have to be at the beginning of my turn when I enter the mission phase, this could then go into the hangar, and then I could either use it again or it can hang in there until somebody else is ready to use it. Once every player has had a turn and the last end phase has ended, then the end of a round triggers, and you can follow that right on the button here. You're going to resolve it from top to bottom, starting with activating any penalties from the story mission first. It'll specifically say, at the end of a round, do X, Y, and Z, so you just follow that. Certain card effects have end of round abilities, such as Complications or Cobra officers, and then you're going to focus on the threat meter. The threat meter has 3 different colors on it, green, yellow, and red, and depending on where the marker is will determine what actually activates. While in the green, when the threat meter activates, the marker will automatically move up 1, while in the yellow, a Cobra Battalion is going to go to the lineup. Cobra Battalions, unless otherwise stated, will always go to the far left card in the lineup and work its way across there. But there are other cards out there that will specify where a Cobra Battalion member should go. And then the red for a 1 to 2 player actually has no effect on it at all. Just for reference, if you're going to be playing a 3 and 4 player game, green is still the same. End of round, the marker would move up 1. Mind you, then after you do the trigger here from the threat meter, the next step for the end of round is just to move the threat meter up by 1 again. So if it's in the green, it's going to move up twice and go a lot faster. In a 3 to 4 player game, at the end of a round, you're going to draw and resolve a complication card from the deck, which could be anything at all, as we know. And then if you can make yourself up to the red at the end of every turn, so it's not even every round, it's the end of every person's turn, a Cobra Battalion goes on to the board. So really watch out if you're playing 3 to 4 players, because that could get very dicey very fast. While going through the game, as with every story mission that you're going to go, if you complete the finale for a particular act, it's going to go under whichever one of the particular piles that you have either succeeded or failed in, and the beginning of the new act will start at the beginning of the next player's turn. Meaning that at the beginning of the turn, because there is no story mission in the field, they're going to go ahead and put it in there and resolve whatever is here. But before they resolve that, what you're going to do is you're going to take all the cards from the Complication deck, any cards from the Complication deck discard pile, and then you're going to find the next level act for Complication cards. For in this case, they all say number 2 on them, and you will shuffle them together into the main Complication deck here. So if you had a storyline, say these were switched, for example, because it's a better example this way, you would do all of that. You would shuffle all these new Complications in and reshuffle the discard pile into it. And then you would take the top 2 and then you would connect it here. And then you would start following all the other instructions on it. And you're going to continue this way from wherever you are all the way down through Act 2, completing that, adding in the Act 3 complications, all the way getting to the finale of Act 3, and hoping that you can take whatever Joes you have and all your powers in order to roll as many dice as you can in order to successfully complete it and win the game. Final thing I want to mention is expert mode. After you're comfortable with the game and its many challenges, you may want to turn up the difficulty by activating any number of these cards during your game. At the start, you're going to take all 6 of these cards and shuffle them together, and you're going to draw 1 for the level of difficulty that you wish to try. However many cards you draw are in play for the rest of the game and are considered Cobra cards for their effects in determining resolution order. So for level 1, you're just going to draw 1 card. For level 2, you're going to draw 2, 3 cards, and so on and so forth. How good are you? And do you think you have the grit and power and determination to handle all 6 cards at once? I think you can do it. Let me know down in the comments below if you have made this type of game before where you have all 6 expert cards in your field and how the result of that went. Some of you out there may have seen my Transformers the Deck Builder tutorials where I showed you guys how to combine all your decks and all your sets together into one box. This way you have everything there and how to form your main decks and things along that ways. For G.I. Joe the Deck Builder, it's really recommended, and I stand by it, to not mix everything together. Highly, highly recommend just keeping everything separate. Keep your core box separate. Keep all your expansions separate. And if you're going to be playing one of the missions from the expansions, use the cards from that expansion in the game that you're playing. So take those particular leaders, anything for the main deck, to shuffle it together. There's a harder mode where you deal out cards equal to what you're adding in, but generally you don't need to do that. But I wouldn't add in every single card together. That is 100% what I would do, and I recommend you guys as well. So if you have G.I. Joe the Deck Builder, have the core set, any expansions you have, if you're playing from the expansion, that's when you mix. If you're not playing from the expansion, do not mix it, and only mix one expansion at a time. I did forget to mention these 2 cards during the tutorial. We have reinforcements and you called for backup. They have a little symbol in them that says solo with a cross out in it. Basically, that means that these cards are not used for solo play. Use them for 2 to 4 players. And if they are in your deck, like if you forget to take them out and you draw them during your solo mode, just put them in the discard pile and draw again. It's really as simple as that. But I wanted to point them out that there are specific cards in the deck that you cannot use for solo play. There you have it, recruits. Everything you need to know in order to play G.I. Joe the Deck Builder, whether you're playing it solo or 2-player or 3 to 4-player. And honestly, the only big difference between those 2 modes is that reserve tile, and then maybe a few things here and there with solo, like putting in the promoted leaders and like that. But that reserve tile is really the biggest difference between 1 and 2-player and 3 and 4-player. Otherwise, the game is exactly the same, and you're going to have a great time with it, no matter how many people you play with. In any event, I hope this tutorial helped you out in order to figure out certain ways to play the game, or if there's anything you needed to really get explained and it was able to help you out, anything at all. I'm very, very happy in order to be able to show you guys these things and for you to be able to give me your feedback and let me know what you think down in the comment section below. If you have any questions for me regarding the rules of this game or whatnot, please leave them down there. Otherwise, let me know what you think of G.I. Joe the Deck Builder. What were some of your favorite moments of the game? What were some of the biggest wins that you had, or even the biggest losses? Because let me tell you, some of these dice in there, they're just weighted terrible in this, where you're going to be missing all the time for no reason at all. Do you even have the game? Is this something you're going to pick up? And maybe this tutorial gave you a better idea what it's like for you to be able to make that choice. I will be doing playthroughs of this game going forward, starting with Mission 2 of the core book. There are plenty of Mission 1s out there for you to be able to find videos of. I wanted to do something a little bit different, so I'm going to start with Mission 2, and then going forward, I'll probably just do them numerically. So Mission 3 will come after that, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then hopefully after that, we'll see what else is released, because I know the flag is coming out. I'd love to see what that looks like and everything. But it also depends on how long I keep this game, because technically this game belongs to my friend. That's what I have right now. I don't have any of the boxes, if you happen to notice. He actually keeps all of his cards in these like Game-Genic style of containers or whatever. They have like a magnet on them in order to keep them sealed. These are specifically for tarot cards. This is multi-layered going down, so it's 2 big layers. that he has just like all of his Cobra cards on one side, and then on the bottom are all of his Joe cards, and then in the middle are a lot of his tokens. So it's a really awesome way in which he is storing the game. No more boxes for him and whatever. And then he's getting the flag in the future, and I hope we'll be able to borrow that from him in order to be able to play it for all of you. That means if you aren't already, be sure you're subscribed to the Home Gamer Dad so you don't miss any future G.I. Joe deck building action or any other fun game that I put out for you to enjoy. If you wish to support the channel even further, a super thanks is always greatly appreciated. You know, you guys are amazing whenever you guys drop one of those. You can also head on over to patreon.com/homegamerdad, check out the tier structures over there, and maybe consider joining the growing Patreon family. Thank you all again. You have been absolutely amazing. Remember, take care of yourselves and each other. We are family forever, gaming together, working together in order to defeat Cobra, fighting for freedom wherever there's trouble. We, as a family, are there. Be sure to stay frosty, and I will see you in the next one. Boot camp complete. Dismissed.